This series is a GRDC investment that takes you behind the scenes as we sit down with some of the people shaping our grain industry, uncovering their journeys, learning more about their passions and the projects that are part of their everyday. We are over in Western Australia. This is now the third part of what has been the GRDC In Conversation podcast. We've covered Southern Australia, we've covered the north across New South Wales and Queensland, and now we've headed west to meet with all sorts of growers, advisors, researchers, and people involved in the Aussie grains industry. Welcome to the next series. So we're good to go. Merrie, if you are, how are you feeling?
Yeah, a little bit nervous.
Oh yeah? No,
Yeah.
Don't be. You would have talked in front of so many people.
Yeah, I have. I never actually enjoy it that much.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Just to do it to help others.
Yeah, do it because I have information that I really believe is useful, and it's not very common. It's not the sort of background that I've studied in is not common sort of information, so people benefit from it.
And so, Merrie, are you able to tell me a little bit about the region here? Like I'd say, as for your reference, it's my first time up through this area of the wheat belt in Western Australia. It's looking amazing this year.
Yes, it is. And this region is the Dalwallinu Shire, and it's one of the biggest wheat growing shires in the state. This year we've had a later germination of the crops, but we've had good winter rains, so the crops are looking really good. We will need some finishing rains in September, which is a little unusual, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed for that one.
We will. And I think when this episode goes live, it will be harvest time. And so hopefully the fruits of the labour are coming in and that rain's fallen. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for you.
Yes, thank you.
And so today what I'm really interested to learn more about you and your career and obviously share with the GRDC audience. But a kid from a farm, and this is my summary, kid from a farm, went nursing, fell in love, met a farmer, came back, and you've been incredibly involved in various groups, including where we were recording in the Liebe Group here, but then also with the Rural Financial Counselling Service and quite a stint with both of them. And so I'd love to know, as a bit of an elevator pitch, if we met at the coffee shop, how would you describe, if you were to summarise your career in a couple of sentences?
My background is in psychotherapy and counselling, but also a great deal of facilitating. So it's meant that I've been involved in lots of groups, whether they're family groups in counselling situations or in farming situations, succession situations. And I really love workshopping and being in families because farming families mean a lot to me, and successful dynamics within a family can really make a difference to the family business. So,
do you think that love and care of family farm or farming families, has that been instilled in you since your childhood, like through your parents?
It actually was. My dad was one of 10, so I had 36 cousins, and we spent a lot of time together, and family was integral to our lives. So it probably is an early childhood thing, but I really embrace families even now.
What was your Christmas like as a kid?
Oh, it was fabulous. Christmas and Guy Fawkes night and all sorts of times of the year we'd find an excuse to all meet up and have picnics.
You'll have to educate me here, Merrie. What was Guy Fawkes night?
Guy Fawkes night, it was a celebration of when Guy Fawkes burnt the government down in London. I think it was in the early 1800s. So there was this fireworks that you used to have on Guy Fawkes night in November. They stopped it because everyone had crops ready to harvest and everyone would be throwing crackers and fireworks around, and there was a lot of accidents and a lot of fires started as a result of it.
Well, there we go. I'm kind of glad it doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. And so going nursing, what was the interest there for you?
In my day, the choices really for women were about administration or teaching or nursing. And I decided to go nursing. And that was a very naive decision that I made, but it was a great decision. It's been great. But I didn't nurse after. So after I finished nursing, my husband and I went off travelling for 9 months and then came straight back to the farm. The local hospital really wanted me to go back nursing. My idea was that I didn't want to deal necessarily with sick people all the time, and I thought I really want to understand people more than the health of people, or not the physical health but the mental health of people. So that's when I started studying.
And because, I'd say it's a topic which is very prevalent in front of mind today. What time was this?
This was when I was 32, I started studying.
Did you do that out of a personal interest with a career ambition or an idea or not?
I didn't know where this was leading to, which has been lovely because it's actually given me a lot of imagination of where it could take me once I had the skills and the knowledge. And I've learned all the way along too. It's not just been a matter of studying in that time. I've joined up a lot of different topics and subjects and concepts along the way that actually make my career what it is, which is, very diverse in a way.
It is. It's incredibly diverse. When you look at the opportunities for especially women in agriculture today and the development of the industry, is there an area that you're particularly drawn to that if you were 20-something now starting out, you'd be drawn to?
Yes, there's a lot of opportunity, and we saw it in the girls in the office here in the Liebe Group, where agronomists and researchers are really, they're sought after, and every town has an agronomist in it. And there's a lot of women now taking on that role. But also in farm businesses, women really add a massive dynamic or quality to a farm business, and often are the ones that are keeping the structure in the business side of the farm going. Yeah, so it's good.
For you, your husband being one of 10, which is just... Oh, sorry, that was your dad. Sorry, your husband, when it came to joining his business and coming back up here, who else, what did their farming business look like when you guys stepped in?
Yeah, it was a pretty simple sort of business and smaller. So we had 4 young children when Ron's father died suddenly of a heart attack. And suddenly I was pretty much thrown into being in the jockey seat with Ron. And that gave me the confidence that I was able to actually be part of a business. So we didn't really go through a traditional succession process. We were just thrown into a situation and then had to do the succession, which was not complicated at all. But over time, we had our own family that we started thinking about. And I was looking at different families within the community who were struggling with succession, and I thought there must be something that mothers and families can do that actually enable family groups to be diverse and have different personalities and interests and qualities and things they can add to a business without there being conflict and major ructions that can really unstabilise a business.
And so you saw that kind of more broadly in the businesses around you. How did yourself and Ron approach the partnership that you were establishing?
So the first thing we started doing was having family meetings as a precedence to having good, strong business ideas into the future. So we used to have family meetings over holidays and where we'd go and what was happening on the farm and who's going to be doing what. And our kids at that stage would have been less than 12 or 13. So there are four of them. And so in doing that, you have to be able to set an environment of collaboration rather than competition, and cooperation and enthusiasm for the family to engage. So as a consequence, we've got 3 members of our family who are farming, which is fabulous.
So would you say that like your family became a bit of a social experiment?
Looking back, I think it probably was, because I don't think people generally think in succession planning that it takes some qualities that you can build into your family really early on that will enable that adult group of people to be able to value and respect difference and diversity.
And did you have a goal in mind, like where you saw success down the track when the kids were adults or anything like that as you were working, or was it really just trying to create good humans?
Well, it was a bit of both, create good humans, but also we always said that anyone in the family who wanted to would be able to go farming, because I'd come through a generation where girls were told they couldn't go farming. I actually had a sister who was not allowed to go farming who would have loved to have. And I thought that it's not okay for male farmers to make that decision that the women can't go farming. And now we see a lot of successful women who are in farming, which is fabulous.
There's more and more. And I think the other point you make there around it was about creating a family that would collaborate, not compete with each other. And so siblings really being friendly, being able to settle disagreements.
Yeah, able to settle disagreements, and still as 40-year-olds, all of them are over 40, still very close and connected, and their families, consequently, all the cousins are really connected and enjoy being together, spend a lot of time together.
It's incredible. Your off-farm roles have been quite extensive. Rural Financial Counselling Service. And am I right in saying for 16 or 17 years or something?
Yeah, for 13 years with Rural Financial Counselling. Yeah. And that was really interesting, going and being with families as they go through difficulty and supporting them into making good decisions about their futures. And sometimes there was a lot of grief in it, because sometimes families had to actually leave the farm because they were going through financial difficulty. But the other side of it was actually exploring ways that they were able to refinance their positions and be able to actually make something of their futures, and gaining some extra skills or bringing in some extra people who were able to be supportive of them. So it was fabulous work.
Because last year I got the chance to meet a couple of different rural financial counsellors. It's funny how once you've become exposed to it, then all of a sudden you start meeting them all over the place, and meeting some farms that had actually sought the help. And obviously there was certain criteria they needed to meet. In my mind, I guess I had this assumption of it was the battler that would use it, but actually some really savvy farmers use it as going, well, actually it's a tool, it's another resource I can get out of my own head and get that third party kind of feedback.
Exactly. And those rural financial counsellors are seeing multiples of these businesses and how this business that they're coming to could potentially make tweaks and make suggestions without actually advising, because it's not an advisory role, it's about a supportive role. And when they're being supported, they gain confidence in being able to make and explore different ideas that may be going to work for their particular business that the rural financial counsellor hadn't thought of. So, yeah, it's a really useful thing for people to tap into.
What did you get out of it the most when you were working with those different businesses during some pretty difficult conversations and times as well?
For our own business, probably not a great deal. For me, it's a pleasure being with people and encouraging and supporting and being a mentor for them. So for me, there was a lot of self-gain in it.
I think that's more than enough, because I'm sure they were really benefited from it as well.
Yeah.
On the other side of the fence, you were working with the Liebe Group. So I've heard more about it in the last 24 hours than I have ever heard before. Can you explain a little bit to me? What is it? How is it set up? And who's a part of it?
So it's about 27 or 8 years old, I think. Originally, the Ag Department said that we were too far from them to be able to put trials in up here. So we decided as a group of farmers to start doing our own research. So we started a group that had a board, and over the last 26 years, it's just grown and grown, not so much in membership, but in the expansion of the information throughout WA. Each year there's a farm that puts their hand up to have a major research area, and these trials then measured and the results come out in a R&D book at the end of the year. We've got a lot of different organisations engaged in doing the research, the AgWA and the CSIRO and different organisations that want to come up this far now because they realise that the extension of that information goes a long way. And throughout WA, we have a lot of farmer groups. I think there's about 30 or 40 farmer groups that at one level or another are being run by farmers or in cohort with the agencies that are in farming, the ag departments and things.
My take on it is, and I could be wrong, but my take is there's obviously the research and development arms, and then these farmer groups are far more closer to the commercial end. And so it's the R&D happens in the background, gets to a certain point, and then that's where the farmer groups come in, because within much shorter period of time, whether that's 1 to 2 seasons, it could be practically applied in the paddock.
Yes. We have some really innovative farmers up here who try things on their farm. And originally we had a lot of that innovation coming through. But now it's about faster adoption of the technology or the research that's coming out. And WA is fairly fast on adopting. You see the landscape has really changed over the last 15 years.
Can you talk to me more about that, the transition from sheep and livestock through to cropping?
So traditionally up in this northern ag region, we had a mixture of sheep and cropping, so 30 or 40% sheep and the rest cropping. And as the canola started coming into the system, that became a rotational crop for the lupins that we were growing for sheep, and it was much more commercially viable. And so now the lupins have really dropped out. You probably see 2% or 3% of this northern ag region, of this particular region, growing lupins. And it's been overtaken by the canola. And I think the canola is probably a 30%er or a bit less in the cropping system. And the rest is wheat and barley.
Yeah, okay. So it's just a canola, wheat, barley.
Predominantly, yeah.
So your role has been a few different areas, from construction manager of facilities. How's your role changed and evolved as you've been here?
Okay, so originally I was a voluntary board member, and then they saw me as part of the administration and sponsorship development. So I did that for about 15 years, being involved in bringing in parties who were going to be beneficial to the Liebe Group. We used to get parties wanting to get involved because of the name of the Liebe Group, and it was never about that. It was about how much value can you add to agriculture. So I was fairly hard-nosed about where our priorities were. And then as a staff mentor, so I've had a lot of involvement with staff training and mentorship over the years.
And alongside that, you've had a bit of involvement with the GRDC as well, so as a panel member and others. What's that relationship been?
It was lovely and an eye-opener to get the comparisons between the states and understanding what goes on in each state, and seeing the work that GRDC do, which is incredibly valuable to the farming industry. And, you know, that WA is a big contributor to the GRDC and the coffers of GRDC through our levies and things. So we think it's important for WA farmers to actually engage in GRDC and get the value out of that organisation. Yeah.
Merrie, one thing I'd love to know, has there been a favourite project or a couple of projects that you've really loved working on across your career?
So there was a soils health project that we ran for 7 years, and kept the site going for, I think, another 10 years. It's actually finished now, which may be a shame because, with all the soil sites and things coming out. That was a really nice project because it was very left field to the times then, because soil science wasn't really something that, carbon storage and all that sort of thing wasn't really a thing back then, but it evolved after that. So it was a really interesting project. And we found that we needed 14 tonnes of carbon to actually create carbon storage in the soils, which is a bit of a reflection of our types of soils that we have. It was a great project. And, of course, the projects on succession planning and things have been really interesting for me, and doing workshops around succession planning and enabling farm businesses to have the confidence to take up some of the strategies that enable them to do it successfully and without any ructions and problems happening. Yeah.
And it's something that I know even in here, you're passing on a couple of those booklets as well, making sure that people have them. Like, what are the GRDC booklets that you've got, and what are the couple of topics that they relate into?
So there's communication and succession planning booklets and farm labour booklets that you can actually get online, but I had the advantage of being back where they were being published, and I used to say to the people, take them, put them in the toilet and pick them up and flick through them and just look at some strategies that make families collaborative, or families that are able to engage in conflict without actually having any damage done. And people loved the booklets, and you can still get the booklets online. They're very good.
Is there something that you wish, like, having spent your career talking to so many different businesses, whether it's through a succession lens or rural financial counselling lens, or even just at barbecues and whatnot, is there something that you just wish people would know, like I'll say a secret, Merrie's secret to succession, or even just secret to kind of success in farming?
Firstly, enjoy it. Know that farming is a challenge, but it can be very satisfying, and that farming families can really do it well. I watch the corporates come in and engage managers and all sorts of disparate sort of people working there. And I look and I think farming families can get it so much better than a corporate farm can. They're much more productive and they're much better for communities. Communities really flourish when we've got lots of farming families. And I'm passionate about people knowing that when we have families, that we encourage collaboration and respect and value of each other, and embrace the value of difference and diversity, because that's often where the conflict comes from. But when you embrace that, you can actually learn from it and grow in ourselves. So it's a fabulous thing for farming families to know, or any family to know.
And after several decades in agriculture, what is it that makes you hopeful about the sector for the future?
Just the innovation that is constantly happening. And like the rest of things in life, the innovation is sped up. 40 years ago, innovation was about a slow process. Now it's actually a very fast process. And we need to be able to make good judgment around what that innovation is and how relevant it is to our own businesses, and how we can adopt it well, the ones that are good for us. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Merrie, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, there's a few things that I'd like to talk about when we're starting succession, when we have a second generation coming onto the farm. Some simple things like starting family or business meetings and treating them as a professional part of the business and an essential part of the business, to do it frequently. Every 6 weeks having a business meeting is really useful. Training and skilling up and doing that in multiple ways. So we're very fortunate in the Liebe Group where we have lots of workshops and things for young farmers. In other areas, it's about bringing in mentors or sending the young people off for workshops and having people that they can go to who are more knowledgeable, and they don't have to take it from their father all the time, because that's very useful to a business, to not be just rehashing the generational stuff, because we don't know it all. So we need to constantly be getting information elsewhere.
Absolutely. That's where it's so important, isn't it? Whether you get the chance to work for someone else for a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever it is, it's that different perspectives.
Yeah, having mentors.
Yeah. Well, Merrie, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat.
It's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
It's fantastic. And I think over your life, the changes that you've seen and mentioned in the grain growing region up here in WA, and I think what will continue to change is going to be really exciting to see. And ultimately, it's going to be people at the core of it which are going to make those changes happen and continue the industry thriving.
It's absolutely right.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us for the GRDC In Conversation podcast. This series is a GRDC investment that's sharing the stories of the people who are living and breathing the Aussie grains industry. Make sure you check out some of our other conversations and hit follow on your favourite podcast app to never miss an episode.